Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the second night of our virtual ice series. Tonight we got Sam Sobi and Jason Mitchell is back again. My name is Ben FLEISCHACKER. Right now I currently work with Shields doing the special makeup products, so anything with Shields Outfitter on or Shields, somehow, some way I've got my hands on it. So we're excited about tonight. We get to kick it off again and kind of dig in a little bit deeper with some of the questions from the audience. Right now we have an amazing prize package again. We gave away one last night for worth $5,000 of CLAM gear. We've got, I think, if I remember correctly, it's a 600 or XL 600, hub shelter. We got rods, reels, parka, bibs. It's phenomenal. So make sure you guys are going to shields.com/ice series to get registered. And that is the only link that we're going to use tonight for registration. So if we could, let's go ahead and jump in there with Sam. Sam, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Ben.
Here we go. Sam, do you mind giving us a little 411 on your background?
Absolutely. First and foremost, thank you so much for having me. You, the rest of the Shields team, and Jason. This is awesome. Obviously, with the year we've had to still kind of put on a virtual ice event like this, this is incredible. We can all get together, get pumped about ice fishing, and yeah. So, I guess as far as background goes, my name is Sam Sobi. I'm from the cities, Minnesota, a little south of the Twin Cities, and I grew up loving fishing. Grew up playing around with cameras a lot. And one thing led to another. I really got into filming and kind of mixed that with my passion with fishing. And yeah, now I'm doing YouTube full time. And I'm a videographer, I'm an editor, and obviously I'm addicted to anything in the outdoors. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And you're part of the CLAM Ice team as well, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Very good. Jason?
Yeah, no, it's kind of the same story. You know, I was lucky enough to not really know what I wanted to do with my life. And so I fished. I mean, that's all I did growing up was fish, and started fishing at a young age, started guiding at a young age. I think by the time I was 22 years old, I was guiding full time. And by the time I was 23, 24, we had guys working for us, and that just grew. And, I guess I was at the right place, the right time, Devil's Lake, when it just started really blowing up. And then guided for about 15 years, pretty hard on Devil's Lake. And then got the opportunity to get in outdoor television through Tony Dean. I'd filmed quite a few shows with him. He was getting to the point where he wanted to retire and realign on some different projects. And then that's how I got into television originally. And then, then he passed away unexpectedly. But now we've been producing television for, I think this is our 12th, 13th year already. And so
Wow.
It's been an incredible ride. I pinch myself every day. So.
Yep. I mean, there's a grind to it, right? I mean, it's.
Yeah, but when you love what you do, it doesn't seem like it. I mean, I love what I do every day. So.
Absolutely. That's great. And you're a part of the CLAM Ice team.
Yes.
I mean,
Yep. Absolutely.
Products named after you. So I think that says a lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we've been working with CLAM for over 20 years. So.
That's incredible. And both nights have been put on by CLAM, so we want to appreciate and give them thanks for hosting you guys, as well as giving us a prize package for the audience. So let's go ahead and jump in. We got a bunch of questions already coming in. The first one has been sitting in the queue now for a little bit, and it's from Nathan W. The question is, once you find a spot to start fishing, how often do you keep moving? Like, what's the point that you guys make the decision to say, okay, hey, this spot's not going to produce, or that fish aren't as active right here? When do you guys move? And then how long do you guys recommend sitting at a hole?
Well, I can take a stab at it. And a disclaimer, because I've made the wrong call on that particular decision many times in my life. And it's kind of a deal where, there's an old saying, you don't leave fish to find fish, but at some point you wear out your welcome and you have to. And I think it really depends on the history that you have with that particular spot. For example, if I don't know there's fish in a spot, I'm a little bit more impatient. You want the fish to meet you halfway. And if you're the first lure to drop in on those fish or drop on that spot, if there's fish around, you should know pretty quickly. Now, at the same time, if I go to a spot and I catch a bunch of fish, and then I go there the next day and I'm all excited, and it doesn't happen right away, you got to slow yourself down and force yourself to stick it out a little bit, because you might have been there at 9 o'clock in the morning the day before. By the time you found them, maybe it was 10 o'clock. Well, then you're there the next day at 7 o'clock and sit there and moving around that area and nothing's happening. Well, sometimes it's a timing thing or a window thing too. And so, if I've caught fish just recently and nothing really has changed, I'll be a little bit more patient, and 9 times out of 10 that'll pay off. But that's the easiest mistake to make in fishing, is to leave when you shouldn't have, or to stay too long. And I guess the easiest answer is when you quit catching fish, you leave, right? It just, where's that threshold? So.
Mm-hmm. What about your experience, Sam?
A lot of what Jason's saying, and I feel like it depends on what you're targeting. So say if you're targeting like crappies in a basin in the middle of the lake, in the deepest part of the lake, that might be a time where you're drilling a bunch of holes and you might want to kind of move and groove. And if you're not marking anything, keep moving. But if you're targeting like walleyes on a rock point or big gills by some weeds, you might want to stick it out if you know it's a high percentage. And back to what Jason said, if you've never fished the water before, I'm a little bit more eager to move. But if you know fish are there and you know it's kind of a high ticket area where they kind of run through, then I'll definitely stay and stick it out.
All right, and even kind of going into that, talking about the water. Obviously, it's going to be hard water, but you can't necessarily always see the bottom. You can't see. I mean, you're drilling the holes. You're looking at lake maps on your guys' phones. I mean, what do you guys personally use, and what have you seen in that's cost effective for a general person to be able to afford?
Go ahead, Sam.
Sure. So something that's super cost effective that I use right away, especially if I'm fishing a brand new lake, is just on your smartphone, Google Maps and Google Earth. That gives me a good lay of the land on kind of how the lake sets up, because there's a lot of good images. Like you can see parts of the lake where it looks like it's a little bit shallower, there's more weeds, and then you can see parts of the lake where, oh, it looks like it's steep, it drops off. So depending on what you want to target, or if you want to fish shallow in the weeds, or if you don't want to fish shallow in the weeds, Google Earth can kind of give you a good starting point where you can kind of poke around.
Yeah. The Navionics app, what is that, 10, 15 bucks now? And it has just about every lake under the sun. And, the lakes, the maps are a good starting point. It's a good reference. Are they perfect? No. I mean, some of the maps are off. Some, if you want a really, really detailed map, the Lake Master also has an app, but you have to buy each lake individually, and they're about 30 bucks a lake. But if there's like a lake, like say Mille Lacs or Winnibigosh, Devil's Lake, whatever, and you're going to fish it a lot, it's almost worthwhile to have that. And I still like to have a big standalone GPS unit on the dash of my pickup or my snowmobile, whatever I'm driving. That way I can transport waypoints from the summer. I can log my plot trail for getting on and off the ice and getting around pressures and things like that. So I have that information. And to me, it's just more useful because with a smartphone, again, you're trying to drive across the lake, you got your snowmobile helmet on, you're trying to look at your phone and trying to do that with your mittens on, it ain't happening. And so, that's why I don't run touch screens in the winter time, is because when you're wearing mittens and you get frost on the screen or whatever, they're worthless. But just even a 5-7 inch screen, you pull it out of your boat, just buy a cigarette plug-in adapter and a ram mount or whatever you want to do, so that way you can swap it over to whatever your transport vehicle is on the ice, and that makes a big difference in my mind.
Yep. And even kind of piggybacking off that, last night you had mentioned about hardwiring into a unit versus a DC.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I like to do. Yeah, because you're bouncing across the lake and all of a sudden your GPS goes out and you're like, oh, then you got to plug it back in, power it back up, wait to find a signal. And so, yeah, but I mean, but if you're in a pickup, especially, the cigarette lighters are, that'll work fine.
Absolutely.
So absolutely.
Very good. All right. Next question is, what is a good line to use on tip hubs for pike?
I use the heaviest line I can. I'm like a caveman. I mean, 40, 60-pound Dacron, the bigger the better.
Same here. Bigger the better. It seems like fill that sucker full, because it seems like when they got it, just they run so hot.
Yeah, and it rolls off the spool better too when it's thick, versus like say like a 10-pound or something that bites into itself. And yeah, big, thick, heavy line. And what I've started doing a lot the last few years is running a fluorocarbon leader. You can run a 3-4 foot fluorocarbon leader that's say 40-pound fluorocarbon. You can tie it yourself, put a couple treble hooks on, and that's been the best thing that I've found on a lot of lakes.
Very good. So with the last several years, the drills, the ice augers, I should say, they've changed. From the hand augers, the gas power, to the propane, to the electric, and now we've got the option of using a hand drill, with the K drill or the pistol bit, whatever it might be. What drill do you guys use?
I'm a K drill guy myself.
Okay. What about the hand drill too? I'm sorry, I didn't word that correct.
As far as for like a hand auger?
Yeah. So like, are you using like a DeWalt Impact or?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm using a DeWalt. I've used Old Milwaukee too. The biggest thing is that it has to be brushless. Okay, it's got to be a brushless drill in order for it to work. And you're still, I've had some drills where, I've had 2 or 3 hard winters on them. You can start feeling them get hot. You'll wear them out, but it's so lightweight and so fast and so easy that it's especially for a 6-inch flighting. It's the ticket.
Yep.
I run K drill as well, and I have a Milwaukee drill. I've run DeWalt too, and it seems like they work well. But it just seems like I've got nothing against gas augers, but as far as like, it's lighter, It doesn't smoke out your permanent shack if you do a lot of fishing in your permanent shack. It's really the future and kind of where all ice augers are going. And if you have any stipulations against them, I'd tell you to try one out because they're pretty slick.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess too, like when I'm by myself, I can get by drilling 30 holes a day. It depends how thick the ice is. Like if I have to drill holes for myself and 4 or 5 people, and I'm not on fish, and I know it's going to be a long day, there's still nothing that'll beat a 2-stroke gas auger if you need to drill, say, 150 holes through, 30 inches of ice or more. And even when we get up into, northern Canada, even like on Lake Winnipeg sometimes, or when we're lake trout fishing, so turning a 10-inch flooding, obviously, gas is still king. So, gas augers aren't obsolete by any means. It just depends on the application. But for a 4-inch or a 6-inch flooding, which is all you need for panfish, especially. I even use a 6-inch flooding a lot for walleye fishing. At least on inland water. I mean, it's incredibly light and fast. And then like with the cage reel, it's a carbide chipper blade. And so, you can just, if you hit sand, if you hit some weeds and hit stuff that would just ruin, a lot of blades that are, warped or have the serrated, curved edge, you can just keep cutting, and then they got lifetime warranty on them too. So they get to all send them in. So it's really a win-win for the consumer. So.
Absolutely. That's great.
One thing I want to say about chipper blade too, it's really cool is if you fish in a permanent shack and you go out there and maybe you're out there one weekend and you drill your holes and then you go back out there next weekend and you're re-drilling your same holes, the chipper blade just shoots right through. And as far as like, if you fish in a portable, they're awesome. But if you fish in a permanent shack and you're re-drilling your same holes over and over and again, it seems like the chipper blade is it's really good. It's slick.
That much quicker.
Yeah. And it goes through, it doesn't like catch on the side or the old edges where you drilled your other holes. It just, boom, burns right through.
Very nice. So let's talk weather patterns. We got early season, mid-season, late season. Are you guys taking a look at the weather patterns just as much as you do in the spring, summer, fall, in the wintertime?
I don't, because I got to fish anyways. That's my when I was guiding every day, it's like, people like, you pay attention to solar charts. I'm like, well, I know it makes a difference. Like I know like our daytime walleye fishing gets harder during a full moon period, but I got to fish regardless, and I'm kind of the attitude, well, if it's going to be a tough day, I don't want to psych myself out and get in a bad mood at 5 a.m. when I'm getting my bait and stuff put together, so I don't probably follow it as much as a lot of people do. I just fish, and I guess if I don't have a good day, then I can blame it on that, but there's a lot of times where the fish shouldn't bite and they do, so.
Yep.
I followed a little bit, and it depends if I'm just going fishing with buddies, no big deal. But if I am like giant hunting, whether that be for like a big crappie or a big walleye, I will pay attention to see like if there's a pressure system moving in or if there's a big front moving in, there's low pressure. Those are just higher percentage times where you can catch a big fish. So yeah, I pay attention to it a little bit, and it seems like they somewhat correlate, I think.
Yeah, and one thing though too that's really important, I think, with ice fishing, way more than what people ever talk about, at least I hear talk about, is majors and minors with ice fishing are huge. Okay. And if you have a major at say 9-10 o'clock in the morning, which is maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours after sunrise, that can really whack out your morning walleye bite, for example, where you're anticipating everything happening right at sunrise and it's like nothing, then all of a sudden it's like way late and they start to roll. And I think what it is with the major and minors is it pulls a lot of current in a lake. Like even when you're using a bobber in a hole, the bobber is always going to one side a lot of times. There's a lot more current on a lake, than what a lot of people would envision. And I think you see it on rivers too. You get, especially like in tail race areas and stuff, where you get that current and you get that inflow and that bump in water, everything happens. Like those aggressive fish come up into that current. And I think the same thing happens on lakes too. And so that's one thing I look at is major and minor, and I try to line up where I'm on what I feel are my best spots at that time.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Totally agree. Especially for walleye and especially for pike, it seems like major and minors are a big player.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. So, with the industry right now, it's been blowing up. 2020 has been a wild year, but one thing we've seen is the massive recruitment of new and existing, people that may have put the fishing rods down, but they're getting them back out again. It's incredible the number of fishing licenses that are being sold across the country. So with that being said, there's going to be a lot of people out there that are brand new coming out to ice fish. What's kind of a generalized depth that people should be looking at? No electronics, hand auger. We're talking basics. They're just getting into it. I mean, are they going to need to walk all the way out to the middle of the lake, or they should be looking for that 5 to 8 foot of water? Looking at topographical map. I know this is a generalized question. Every lake's different, but what's a good depth? for someone to be looking at?
You know, in my mind, as shallow as you can. I mean, it makes it easy because I get that question a lot. Like, say, you know, I don't have any electronics, or I'm just getting into it. And whether you're in, say, Fergus Falls, Minnesota, and you can go out on a small panfish lake and get out and where you can see weeds frozen in the ice, get on the outside edge and drill some holes, and you can still see down and say 10 feet of water. You can watch fish come in. That's addicting, and that'll get you hooked, and you'll have some success. You're going to catch something. You're going to have a bent rod. If you could be in Madison, Wisconsin, and fish the Madison chain where it's all 5-6 feet of water or less, you know, in weeds, you know, and you know, you're fishing around weeds, shallow water. But I would say shallow water and weeds are probably the easiest way to just get on something that bites, whether it's a pike, a bass, panfish, whether bluegills, crappies. And it's easy to find, and a lot of times shallow water is close to shore, you know. So that's, you know, just to dumb it down and make it simple. I mean, you know, that's something that we follow a lot too. You know, we're in doubt. We, you know, go back to the basics. You never, you know, no matter how much you fish, you always keep going back to the basics at times. So.
Yep.
I totally agree with that. And I know it sounds bad, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to follow the pack. So if it seems like a lot of guys are walking out to the middle of the lake, hey, maybe try it out there. If it seems like a lot of guys are sticking shallow, stick shallow. You can't go wrong if you go out to an area, drill a hole, and you put your bait a foot off the bottom. It seems like you're going to get bit.
Yeah. Very good. Glow baits. You guys use them? Is there a time not to use them? When's the best time to use them?
Are you talking like glow paint or the actual glow phosphorants and chemical stuff?
I'd imagine they're glow paint.
Glow paint, yeah. I use glow paint, low light, after dark, especially after dark walleyes and after dark eel powder is really where you see it, big time.
I 100% agree. I'm very superstitious. It seems like even just for crappies, it's got to be glowed up. It's got to be ripping. And it seems like as soon as that water gets dark, and especially in like a clearer or a muddier lake, I use glow jigs all the time, especially for crappies and walleyes.
Do you guys use them during the daytime at all?
Yeah, they're still tied on. I don't worry about charging them as much, you know, but after dark, I mean, you'll see it. I mean, you hit it with the glow and put it down there, you can just see it glowing on the way down. As soon as it gets down to the, you know, I mean, the fish just show up, and then the glow wears off and you hit it again. I mean, so there's definitely something to it, you know, after dark, especially you'll see where you can see it makes a difference. So
yeah.
A cool little product. I don't know how long they've been out, but Vexlar makes it. But you could put it on any unit that you run. Is they make a little glow ring, and it's just a bunch of UV lights, and it's way better than fiddling with your phone or a flashlight to try to glow up your jig. It's like it's right on your unit. You just boom, dip it in there. It's glowed up with UV light. Boom, back down. You're all bright.
Is there a way to find weed edges with the Vexlar?
Absolutely. Easiest way is you drill a hole, and you know, you've got the bottom, which is going to be a lot better signal than what weeds will give you. And a lot of times I like to turn my gain down, but you know, you're going to just get these choppy lines that are just, you know, intermittent up in the water column, and say they stop 5 feet below the ice, maybe they come all the way up to the ice. But yeah, you'll definitely see weeds on your Vexlar.
By adjusting the gain.
Yeah, in the fish weeds, you know, tune down your gain. I mean, if you're using a 28 or even the new broadband FL30, you can tune your gain way down, and there's a weed mode you can actually use. The 18s, there's a low power mode. Use low power and try to get that weed signal as weak as you can. So that way you can see fish moving up and down through the weeds, and you can see your lure in the gaps in the weeds a lot easier. But, you know, there's a couple different strategies. You know, you fish above the weeds and get the fish to come up, or you can go down in the weeds and, you know, and fish those open gaps, you know. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely use your Vexlar as a very useful tool.
So how do you find the open gaps? Drilling holes?
Well, I'm talking the gaps between the canopy and the roots, and the canopy and the, you know, I mean, you find gaps that way where you can actually punch through the top canopy and get in those gaps. You know, it's just like punching a jig on a mat for bass, you know, or, you know, obviously then there's gaps in the weeds, there's lanes in the weeds that, you know, where you have weeds that maybe reach all the way up to the bottom of the ice, and then 3 feet away, you've got this hole or bowl. And what's cool about it is when you find those spots, you pluck a few fish out of there, and then they just recharge with new fish. It's just, you know, those spots are magnets. Yeah, absolutely.
Very good.
And one thing I want to say about that is I actually saw this from watching Jason's show back in the day. So when you're fishing like a basin with crappies, this is the first time I saw this. Jason would put his transducer down and he'd swing it around his hole, and he's looking for fish. And you can kind of do the same thing when you're fishing weed lines, just like you were talking about, is if you feel like you're on the edge of those weeds, you can put your Vexlar transducer down and kind of swing that, because it kind of shoots that sonar out to the left and right. And if you're getting the flicker of the weeds, then you can really try to dial yourself in to be right on the weed edge. That's pretty cool.
Very good. When is the right time to be using braided line, fluorocarbon, or mono? Do you guys have anything specific, or do you guys run liters of fluorocarbon for most everything?
I use a lot of fluorocarbon if I'm using 2 pound or less, especially in, like, say, bulrushes and weeds. Fluorocarbon is just tougher. I use a lot of mono. I also use a lot of 3 pound mono, especially for crappies. There's times if I'm fishing for big panfish or big crappies or even deep water perch where I'm using, say, like a small spoon or a small glide bait for panfish, where I'll use like a 4 pound frost braid. I use braid for walleyes all the time. When I'm jigging for walleyes, almost all the time I'm using braid, like a 10 or 8 pound braid. A lot of times I'm using a fluorocarbon leader. On Devil's Lake and some place where you have steam water, you don't always have to have a leader, but I find that the fluorocarbon leader makes it more pike proof if nothing else. But I will say that, like, you get like up in like even like Leech Lake and Winnie and stuff where you have pretty good water visibility. There's times where I'll just catch more fish with mono, if the water's really clear. Great Lakes are the same way. I mean, I'm almost always using almost using monofilament out there as well. When you get zebra mussels, even Mille Lacs has changed, where you almost have to use a fluorocarbon leader, and the longer the leader, the better. And I like to use high vis braid, but I'll take a Sharpie and just blacken out that top, or the bottom, say 2, 3, 4 feet of that braid. I find that it makes it blend in even better than when it's just bright yellow or like a crystal or white color. It really stands out underwater. So.
Yep. Do you guys do a lot of line watching?
At times, more so for panfish, bluegills especially. Crappies with an up bite, that's an obvious line watch. But yeah, absolutely. What I like to do too is take like a high vis line, and I'll just kink the line in my finger. I'll kink it between my finger and my thumb, especially like with like a 3 pound test, and I'll get a kink in it so it's like this, okay. And then when I'm jigging, if it goes like this or goes straight, I can really detect a lot lighter bites than I can pick up on a spring bobber. Wow. And if it's really windy and nasty out, I'll do it where it's below the water in the hole, and I'll be looking down the hole, watching the line down there. But I'll catch fish doing that when it's really, really hard to pick up bites anywhere else, and that'll save my tail many times.
That's brilliant.
Same deal with the line thing. I use a lot of fluorocarbon, but obviously you have a lot more sensitivity with braid, and it seems like if I'm fishing in a house more, I like to run braid to fluoro. But if I'm fishing outside, it seems like there's so much buildup on the braid that sometimes it could be unmanageable if it's really cold. So I run a lot of fluorocarbon, but if you do fish inside and you can run a braid to fluoro leader, it's really.
See, I run a braid out. I'm exact opposite. I run braid outside because what I find is if it's, say, 20 below zero, and my hole's getting smaller by the minute, and it freezes to the side of the hole, or there's slush in the hole, and it's just always freezing to something, as I can be a lot rougher with it. And I can take a chopper or a mitt and just shred that ice off. Whereas when that happens with monofilament, I almost have to suck the ice off with my mouth, because if I slide it, just slides down the line. Pretty soon I got this big icicle below the water, on my line, and so it just keeps collecting. So with braid, is I can shred it. I just put my hand on the spool so the drag doesn't slip. And especially when I'm walleye fishing or even perch fishing, crappie fishing inside, is the worse it gets, the more I love braid, because 2, 3 pound mono is really tough to deal with when it's below zero. I mean, it's just you sticks to the hole and you try to pop it free, and you got to retie, and so that's the tough part. So just depends on how bad the conditions are. So everything freezes up when it's that cold. So I find that braid's a lot easier to deal with. So
very good.
For outside fishing, I don't know how many years they've been around. There's this cool product. I just saw it in Shields the other day. It's called Ice Defense.
Yeah.
You can put it right in your hole, and it literally takes the water, which is a lot warmer than the top of the bottle of water, and it pulls that warmer water up, and it kind of circulates all that water. It's different than if you were to put just like an aerator or bubbler in it, and it keeps your hole wide open. And I got a chance to play with that a little bit last year, and that's like game changer.
Yeah, I've been using that too. I like it a lot. You still get ice on your line, but it holds open all day. So
yeah,
very cool. Hey Sam, when you're out night fishing, what are some of the things that you kind of focus in on? What are some tips that you can give a person that just no clue?
Oh man. Well, first off, the glow jig, definitely. And I don't know why, it seems like night fishing, it's easier to just kind of flip up a shack, put a heater up and sit right there. But I'd tell you, definitely hole hop at night. definitely hole hopping. It doesn't matter if you're sitting for walleyes on like a big rock point, or if you're fishing a weed edge, like definitely consider hole hopping, even though it's a little bit colder and it's a little bit harder to get out of the shack.
Mm-hmm.
Night fishing can be an awesome opportunity to catch fish that don't come out during the day, and some really big fish too.
So with the ice jig or glide jig or whatever you guys are fishing, rattle bait, what do you look for at night then? I mean, are you looking for something that's going to be more subtle, something that's going to put out some vibration, noise?
It all like, it depends upon, I feel like if it's a muddy body of water, I want a little bit bigger profile jig, something that glows a lot. But if it's a really clear body of water, then I'll tone it back. I'll get really finesse, and I'll take plastics, I'll cut them up, I'll glow the plastics. It seems like just play with your bait size if it seems like you're getting marks that come in, or if you're getting fish that aren't willing to eat.
Yeah, I think by and large, too, you can fish a lot higher in the water column. Say if you're walleye fishing in 10, 15 feet of water, you're catching fish a foot, 2 feet off the bottom during the day. At night, don't be afraid to move it up 4, 6, 7 feet off the bottom. It's just those fish are cruising, they're moving, and that gets silhouetted. I think they can see it further away. Mm-hmm. And glow colors, and sometimes dark colors can be the ticket too. You never say always or never with fishing, but yeah, and a lot of times you can get away with a lot bigger profiles too, at least one size or two size up from what you're fishing with during the day. Very
good. All right, so here's a more aspirational question for you guys versus technique specific. But if you guys could go anywhere you wanted to in the world for one ice fishing trip, the legendary epic trip, just you can only do it once, where would you guys go?
I got mine planned. So I got to figure out to take a helicopter in Alaska. I want to catch one of those she fish, which is the biggest member of the whitefish family. I want to take a helicopter into some lakes where you can catch them, land the helicopter on the ice, and just tell the helicopter to pick us up in 3 or 4 days. And, hopefully we've caught a she fish by then. But that's one of the things that I've been scheming and planning the last couple of years. So.
That's pretty cool. Sam?
That's an awesome bucket list trip. I don't have anything narrowed down right away. I'd like to explore different areas of the ice belt that I feel like aren't talked about much. And there's like a lot of southern states that have awesome opportunities. But if there was like one trip and one place I had to go, is I'd like to explore more way up north and into Canada, or even northern Minnesota too. Just do more lake trout fishing. And I know Jason's done a bunch of that. They fight so hard, and I've caught them through the ice too. But just like a real big giant dinosaur lake trout, that's something I'd love to get my hands on.
Yeah, that's as good as it gets there. I love lake trout.
Very good. All right, so advanced, so not 101 Vexilar, but how about like 301 level Vexilar? What do you guys see novice people miss on that screen, on that flasher, that you pick up?
In my mind, it's the body position and posture of the fish. So a fish comes in, and you can really learn a lot by sight fishing and watching on a camera, where fish will come in. And you can almost tell by their body posture that they're not going to bite, or they don't like what you're doing. Their fins will be really tight to their body first off. And when they get interested, their fins pop out and their gills pop out, and they just change their posture. I mean, you can see it, physically see it. And a camera or sight fishing is a good tool to teach you that. But when you get that change in posture, that's important. And you can pick that up. You can pick up that movement on that Vexilar signal so much better, where every flasher, every unit, every LCD will show you a line indicating your lure and a line indicating the fish. But when you've got a fish nose to nose, you're just doing these small little moves, trying to figure, okay, is it a slow lift? Do I bubble, and then lift? Okay, maybe I do a little quicker and see if I get a response. And when you're doing something, all of a sudden you just get that signal's in the same spot, but it flutters. That fish is almost like, especially with walleyes, you can almost feel like they're cocking themselves to hit it. And that is such invaluable information, is look for that flutter in the signal. And to take it a step farther, say like you're fishing for deep perch in Devil's Lake in say 40 feet of water. And at that point, you might have a cone angle that might be 6 feet across. Okay. And when the fish are getting out on the edge of that cone angle and coming in or ignoring you, say you might be doing some really high rips to try to pull fish in from say 10, 20, 30 feet away, and you're not going to catch them doing it if they get closer. So you have to know right away to change it up. And it's almost like I compare it to like if you're a waterfowl hunter, like say a highball call or flagging for Canada geese, where you're not going to be pounding on that flag right when those geese are lined up on the deck, swinging their heads back and forth, right? You're just going to be, just almost a rumbling, low rumble in the call, just to lay those geese down. And the same thing with fishing. And so you can see that bottom move. You can look for fish in the bottom or way off on the edge of the cone angle by looking for that movement in the bottom. And that's why I think so many anglers love using Vexler, because you get such raw, better information. When you digitize a signal like in a boat, that digitized signal is an advantage because the boat's moving and you need some type of a filter, some type of something to distort that signal so that you can get an arc, so you can get a nice clean bottom. But in the wintertime, with everything being stationary, it's nice to have that raw signal. And so that to me is learning how to interpret that signal and spending the time to see what, really know what you're looking at. That's the key. That's what takes it to a whole other levels when you get to that point.
100% mood. And that's the cool thing with the Vexlers. It's so fast. Like, it goes down there and hits that signal, and you read it so fast. It's like, just like Jason was saying, you can totally tell the mood of the fish. And that tells you everything. If you're being too fast with your cadence, if you're being too slow, if you're not being aggressive enough, is just like Jason said, there's a mark, that being your bait, and then another mark coming in, that being your fish. But there's so much more you can read in there. And that's just like spending more time on the water, spending more time with your Vexler is you can really tell, is that fish hot or is it just a fish? Mm-hmm. And if you get that fish hot with your cadence, it's game over. Boom,
Yep.
you got it.
A lot of times, if you know it's a big fish, you fish for it completely different than if it's just a run-of-the-mill fish. The big fish like to chase it. So all of a sudden a big mark shows up. You're going to fish for it completely different than, say, the last 3 fish that came in before that were, say medium size or smaller. Big fish, it seems like they like it. They like that bait getting pulled away. They like to chase it and they want to gun it down and eat it. And so, the information that you get from what you see on a Vexler is so invaluable. I can't stress that enough. Can you catch fish without it? Absolutely. And we caught fish for years. I remember, even like the very first flasher I ever had for ice fish, I remember reading about Dave Gens, and I had an old Humminbird Super 60, and I mounted a wood box with a motorcycle battery, and it was, it was terrible compared to, but had to try it. And then the Hondexes and the old Vexler FL8s came on, and we started using those. And at that time, that was the greatest thing. And then when the 18 came out and we had Zoom for the first time, oh my goodness. All these different progressions, but it's funny. There's people running around with Vexlers that are 20, 25 years old and they're still going strong. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
Yep. All right. Again, for the audience out there, make sure you're going to shields.com/iSeries to make sure you get registered for tonight's event for the prize package. All right. Next question is inline versus spinning for the reels. When do you guys like them? When do you not like them?
Go ahead and start, Sam.
Sure. So I use both, and I love my inline reels. I probably have 8 inline reels, these like CLAM spooler elites that I've had for, 6 years, and they haven't broke on me, and I'm pretty hard on my gear. If I'm fishing shallow water, especially panfish, I love the inline reels because there's no click open the bail type deal. It's just you rip that out really quick. Your line doesn't get full of memory. It doesn't spin around and stuff like that. So if you're fishing shallow panfish, inline reels 100%. But if you're fishing deep walleye, deep lake trout, it's nice to flip that bail open and it goes all the way down. And then you have a better drag system with spinning reels too. So it's about what you're fishing for and kind of how you're fishing. But yeah. I use both 100%.
Yeah, both have an application. In my mind, the inline reels are really shine, obviously 2, 3, 1 pound test on really, really tough bites where you almost have to dead stick it and hardly do anything with the rod. And, I still think that a lot of people would probably catch more fish with a spinning reel, because consider this, a lot of times your fish come in windmills where 90% of your fish are caught in 10% windmills. And it's a matter of getting up and down as fast as you can. I still feel like I can do that a lot quicker with a spinning reel. Walleye fishing, spinning reel all the way. In some ways, there's a lot of bad information out there in my mind because every reel is going to develop line twist. Okay, the fact that an inline reel doesn't ever twist up or spin the line is a fallacy. I think what you have to look at it as is it's a line management system. Okay, where when you put new line on a spinning reel, and I pound that jig pretty aggressively and pretty hard. Okay, and when you're reeling up a bluegill, it fights in a circle every time you reel it up. You're building up twist in the line, but on a spinning reel, you might get, say, 2-3 days out of your line, and your line at that point is junk. It starts to wrap up on the tip from the twist. When you put your jig in the water, you have a really fast spin. Okay, your line is jacked up, and the only way to catch fish at that point is a really hard quiver or a really aggressive pounding movements. Okay. And when you can't catch fish on that, there's nothing else you can do, because if you slow down and try to bob it, that twist is going to, you just don't catch, they don't bite that. Okay. And on an inline reel or a spooler type reel, instead of getting, say, 2 to 3 days out of line before you have to change it, you might get, say, 5 days. It just extends the lifespan of that line before it is so twisted up that it isn't catching fish anymore. And I tell you what, I've been on the road before where I say I've been fishing hard for 4 or 5 days and hadn't had a chance to change line, and I get to a new lake. And if it's a tougher bite, like, I'm struggling that day, and I know exactly why. I get back to the hotel room and change line, and I come back out the next day and catch fish with everybody else. I mean, that line, especially with panfish, it is such an integral part of the presentation. It's usually the most important part of your presentation, is what you can do with that jig on really soft, slow movements where you're not twisting. A half turn's okay, but when it starts to helicopter and spin, you're done. And so that's the way to look at inline versus spinning. Spinning reel, you got better drag, up and down faster. Walleye fishing, you don't even, and especially lake trout fishing, you'd be like showing up to a gunfight with a knife. I mean, you get laughed at if you showed up in northern Manitoba with an inline, I mean, it'll not even go, but for panfish, finesse panfish applications, definitely a tool.
Now, is there a way, once you do get that line twist, and say you're committed to wherever you're at, is there a way on the ice? I know there is open water, you can clear out your bail and let the line out real.
Yeah, I mean, I've dragged it behind on the snow, walking, or behind my snowmobile. But you're dealing with 2-pound test, and so it's pretty tough on it. And you can run it through your fingers and get some of the twist up. What I find is once it gets twisted up, replace it. And that's the thing is, don't go anywhere. Don't try not to get anywhere where you don't have some extra spools. Like, line is cheap. You look at everything that costs into fishing. Line is cheap. And you don't have to replace the whole spool. Just peel off 30 feet and put on a new 50 feet of new line, and you're good to go. You don't have to replace the whole spool, but just replace enough to where your presentation is good again. So
very good. Hey, Sam. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sam.
I was just going to say, one cool tip I do when I put on line, doesn't matter if it's a spinning rod or a spooler, is if I have a new package of line, sometimes I'll fill up the bathroom sink with like really hot water, and I'll put my spool right in there, and I'll get it like fully submerged and soaked, and it just makes it doesn't need to be like boiling or anything, but just some hot water gets a little more supple, and then I'll spool my line on with that, and it seems like it comes out no line twist.
Yeah, and make sure it comes off the spool right. If it's twisting up when you're reeling in, keep flipping that spool until you get rid of that, because otherwise you're going to start out
twisted
with a bad line.
Yep.
So make sure that when you're spooling it on, it comes onto the ice spool right. So
very good. All right, so Jason, we talked yesterday very briefly with Matt on the phone about doing some catfishes through the ice. I'm going to pick on Sam here and see if Mr. Sobi has done any catfishing through the ice. We know Jason does, but you got any tips or tricks about that? And what would you recommend for a rod and reel system for that?
Dude, I've done catfishing through the ice. So when I first went to college in Stevens Point, there's just like the big Wisconsin River there, and we got into some good catfish. You can get into catfish all over on the river if there's safe ice, but right by dams were super good, and we basically just take a decent jigging spoon, doesn't matter what size it seems like, load it as full as you can with minnow heads, and just pound the bottom. And that's where we first caught catfish. And then last winter I had the opportunity to go with Matt and kind of chase around some of his pet catfish, and they're loaded there. We drop down cameras there, and that's one cool thing, is to see how catfish actually eat is way different than you'd think so. And it seems like some of these fish would go completely vertical, and then they come up and smoke it, and it's crazy. They're awesome fighting fish.
What rod reel combo did you use?
Oh man, you can use a variety of stuff. I think I was using like a 2B soft touch at the time. It was kind of like a shorter walleye rod, just any short medium action rod, and I think I was using 6-pound braid to like a 6-pound fluorocarbon leader. To be honest, it seems like if those cats wanted to eat, they would roll right in and they'd just smoke it.
Doesn't
if
matter.
they didn't want to eat, they'd come sniff around. I feel like with their whiskers and stuff, they're so much more keyed in on the scent of the bait, where like it doesn't matter what you're using, as long as you had a bunch of bait on your spoon, you'd be good to go.
Yep. All right, so back to some more aspirational, I guess. This isn't hopefully an aspirational deal, but what are you guys' funniest stories you got from the ice? One story. Each person.
I'm queuing Jason up right here. This is not even an on the ice story. If you want to tell it, you don't have to tell it. But if you want to tell it, I think it's a pretty good story.
I might as well. Keep asking.
This is a good one.
So I was in college at the time, and I was kind of actually on my way out of college because I didn't go to college after that, and my grades weren't very good and stuff. But anyways, I was fishing all the time, and I mean, I had my ice auger in my dorm room and just fishing, and just, you know, hunting. And that was kind of my problem, is I fished and hunted too much and never got good grades or anything. Well, what happened was I was pheasant hunting in the fall. It was about this time of year. It was really cold. I was like 20, 30 below. And I fell through the ice on a creek because there's a bunch of pheasants in this creek bottom, and the ice on the creek was the quietest way to get in on these pheasants. They're really wild. And I fell through the ice, and it was really cold. And by the time I could get back to the truck, I mean, my coveralls were frozen stiff, and I couldn't get my keys out of my pocket. I had to like grab them between my thumbs and turn get the door unlocked and get the pickup running. And that was before cell phones or anything, so it's pretty stupid, really. But I was just cold, and I remember just rocking in my pickup with my hands underneath my armpits, just shivering. And finally drove back to the dorm, and laying in bed, it felt like there was somebody like hooking up electrical jumpers on my feet. Like my legs would just stick almost straight up. I mean, it hurt so bad. And I took a couple of warm showers, and then after that, my feet swelled up, and it hurt to put my shoes on. And then the swelling went away, and I was pricking my, taking just kind of bumping my feet, wiggling my toes and stuff, and everything seemed okay. But I noticed that my toenails turned black and purple. Okay. And so I never, I wear socks, and so it's like, nobody ever noticed or nothing. So no big deal. Well, then I don't know, the following spring, then I don't know how I got in on this deal, because I was never in class and I wasn't really part of the gang, but the class went on a couple of classes went on a spring break trip thing to Minneapolis. Okay. Well, I didn't even know half the people in my class, and I end up going on this trip. That's kind of how I was in college. If it was fun, I was there. If there was work, I wasn't. Okay. And so I'm on this trip, and we're in a hotel somewhere over in Minneapolis, and I'm sitting in a hot tub, and, there's a bunch of, girls and, people from this class, that I'm in, and everything's going great. We're all laughing, everybody's having a great time, and they all jump out of the hot tub like a bunch of mallards. And I'm like, well, what happened? I'm looking around the hot tub. I feel something bump my neck. I look down, my toenails fell off, and they're fluttering in a big circle around the hot tub like a bunch of spinner blades. And so that was my, that's a story that everybody loves to hear. So, yeah. So I just sat in the hot tub by myself, and that's it.
Wow. But you still got married, so there's hope, for anybody out there.
Yeah, it was meant to be.
That's right. All right, Sam. There's a lot of people wanting to know your funniest ice story right now.
Oh, dude, that's tough act to follow. First and foremost, I've never lost all my toenails and fingernails in a hot tub with a bunch of my peers before. But as far as like crazy things happening that maybe don't get captured, is a lot of stuff breaking and a lot of like travel difficulties, whether that be snowmobile or truck or anything. I remember one time, I don't know if we were at the Northwest Angle, like way up north in Canada, and it was super cold, and we were trying to get this truck and this trailer up this hill for like, I don't even know, an hour and a half, and everything was just slicked over and full of ice, and we'd almost take turns, and nobody wanted to do it because we'd get up halfway this big hill and we start to slide back down. And with a trailer, it was like that the whole way. And it seems like we tried that for an hour and a half, and then my buddy that actually owned the truck and trailer, he ended up kind of T-boning it into it. Like, we were just excited it didn't happen to us. And it's just crazy stuff with the cold, honestly. As far as a foot story, because Jason went off a foot story, is something funny that's happened to me. I think it was last year in a permanent shack. We were running outside getting tip-ups and stuff. And like when you're in a permanent shack, you've got basically none of your winter gear on. We're running outside in Crocs and stuff. So me and my buddies, we were running outside all in our Crocs getting tip-ups. And then we went back in, we went to bed, and we put our Crocs, because they were half soaked, near the heater. And in the morning, like, I don't know if our heater was blasting or if it's because our Crocs were fully submerged in water, our Crocs shrunk like 4 sizes. So we went to go put them on in the morning, go run up and get tip-ups, and they were just like covering the first half of our foot. And we're like, what the heck? I thought I had my buddy Murray's on. He's got small feet. But It's just crazy. Different stuff shrinking and different stuff not working when it's super icy. Probably my craziest stories.
Well, at least it wasn't a scary story. I mean, Jason's kind of scary considering
Yeah,
he fell
Jason's
in.
is kind of scary.
Hypothermia and frostbite, and he still survived. And all right, so a couple questions right now that I'm going to kind of group together because I think there's a little bit of play on it. But how do you target finicky fish? So when you're fighting that fickle bite, do you guys looking to match the hatch, try to go complete terrestrial, complete natural, or what are you guys doing? Are you guys going big, small? You know, and how much effort do you guys go into matching the hatch when it comes to this too?
Yeah, matching the hatch can be tough. I mean, I think you got to, with your jigging cadence and stuff, I think there's something to be said for, sometimes you can use bigger profiles, soft plastics, and imitate a minnow. And there's other times where you're just quivering that jig, especially with a spring bobber where it looks more like an insect. But, you look at chartreuse, one of the most popular colors ever. There isn't anything chartreuse in the whole lake, and so you have to be careful with falling on it. It can be kind of a crux that I think can maybe almost give you some bad ideas or some maybe a bad mentality that doesn't do you any good. I think if there's anything, a lot of times downsizing, a lot of times lighting up line. I think too, even like with walleye fishing we talked about earlier, where I love to use braided line for a lot of my jigging, especially like glide baits, spoons, things like that. On a tough bite, I catch more fish with monofilament. I think what it is, those fish can come up and suck on it, and you don't feel them as fast, they don't feel you as fast, and they can suck on it a little more. Like the kind of bite where, those fish come up and you don't know the fish is there till you lift, and it's just a little bit of weight where they're not coming in and punching it. That's definitely a deal where monofilament just seems to catch more fish. Panfish, I've seen a lot, whether it's northern Iowa, parts of Illinois, especially with high pressure, even metro lakes where you drop down to 1 pound test, and that makes a big difference, and you just downsize. And so that's probably the easiest answer in my mind is downsize, lighter line. And some lakes just have finicky fish. You have lakes where there's low densities of fish and really high forage, and they're always going to be finicky, and you just have to learn to deal with that. Devil's Lake can be that way sometimes with the perch, and that's just the way it is. You have to learn to adjust to that, and it's you're just not going to get aggressive fish in some ecosystems because of that, but some of those ecosystems produce some of the biggest fish because of that. So
Sam?
I totally agree. Line size, and just even use a little bit smaller jig. And back to what Jason said about the cadence, especially for like big bluegills and stuff like that. If they're really finicky or it's really tough and you're playing around with a whole bunch of different cadences, sometimes it doesn't hurt just to tuck that reel and rod right against your chest or your tummy and just let it sit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let them come up and stare at it. And sometimes it's like a stare off, especially with big bluegills. Sometimes they'll be sitting there looking at that jig for what feels like an hour, but it's, a minute or even 2 minutes, and they'll finally do it. So just sometimes really just sitting there and holding it as still as you can. That can be the difference between catching a giant fish and not.
yeah, absolutely.
Very good. I'm sure this is something that's plagued ice fishing for as long as it's been around, and it's how do you prevent rods from freezing up? And I imagine it's the rods, the reels, the line, everything else. And one thing that comes to my mind real quick on this one is glycerin. It's something I use in my trap line when I'm running snares, and I got to worry about the freeze thaw or freezing drizzle or anything else like that. Do you guys use anything similar to that, like an aftermarket, putting some glycerin on it that doesn't freeze up? Do you guys sucking on line? We've already talked about that. What are some ways? I mean, and this is something you probably even see in the fall, late fall, early spring, when ice is off.
Yeah, the big thing is even like when it's cold, I mean, it's a couple things I like to do just in general is, I get to run, like chapstick or beeswax on your zippers on your fish house, whether it's a hub or a flip over, you get zippers that freeze and you're yanking on them, a lot of times put a bigger loop on with parachute cord, that way you can, use them with mittens on. As far as, in the hole, I started using a de-icer this year. That helps a lot. I remember back in the day, people would drill a second hole next to the primary hole and put a coffee can full of charcoal in it to keep it open, but that's really time consuming, and it kind of marries you to a spot. If you're going to be fishing a spot all day, I guess that works. But, I always joke that a lot of my spots aren't that good. I only get a half day out of them when I got to move, and so the de-icer is a great tool. And when it's really cold out, I like to use a lot of braid outside just so I can I don't have to take my gloves off with just a mitten. I can shred that ice off fast, and you might have to do it, twice a minute. But, it's the best thing that I've found. I haven't had any success putting anything on my line that keeps ice off the line. With reels, I remember back in the day, reels had a tendency, reel manufacturers had a tendency to put way too much grease in them. And when you get them out in the wintertime on ice, it would just, work terrible. And so, wipe out all the grease in your reels, unless you're buying a reel that's specifically made for ice fishing. Most of the manufacturers that make reels for ice fishing, go really light or don't use grease on purpose because of that, but yeah, take the grease out of everything.
It's the first time I've ever heard that, to take grease out.
Yeah. Yeah. We used to do freezer tests. We'd leave a reel in the freezer for 3 days and then turn the handle and until we get it right, and there's different, low temperature oils and greases and stuff that people use now, but all it is they're not using as much grease. That's the whole key, is wipe them clean.
Sam, any tricks you got?
Yeah, besides all that, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, is that weird cool blue thing, the ice defense unit. And just if your hole's open and you're not getting fully frozen out, it seems like your line is that much better. So I played with it last year. I really liked it, and I'm going to probably run it this year.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, the ice defense. I was calling it de-icer, but it's ice defense.
Ice defense is so cool, dude. It's just the way it pulls the water, it pulls the warmer water down and brings it up to the surface. You can run cool tests on it. There's some cool videos out it online if you guys are interested in it, and it's slick.
Right on.
And it plugs right into your Vexlar.
That's pretty cool too.
Yeah.
All right, 5 more minutes of questions, and then we're going to wrap up and announce the winner. So a question directly for you, Sam, from Richard. Have you ever fished old school, jiggle stick and a hand auger?
Yes, 100%, 100%. My dad, so growing up, my grandpa was really into spearing, and that's like all he did. He was big into panfish in the summer, but if it's wintertime, he's spearing. And my dad, that's all he knew. So he didn't really know anything about, jigging for fish and stuff like that. But when we first got into it, jiggle stick, hand auger in old spear houses, and that's what we did. And it totally works. There's actually a lot of really awesome hand augers on the market too for pretty cheap. And it's if you have that and a depth finder, like a big heavy lead weight and a cork, you're good to go. You can ice fish pretty
I think you can still catch fish on that pretty easy, especially the spring bobber in shallow water. I mean, it's all you'd need in a lot of cases.
Yep. All right, so this is a question that is first for the last 2 nights. First time, and Jason, you kind of mentioned earlier that you've targeted before, and I'm sure Sam as well, but what's the best way to target eel pout?
You start.
I am not like an eel pout extraordinaire. I'm an eel pout fanatic. I love them. If there was more times throughout the year that I feel like I could target them, I would. But the best way I found is just the biggest, ugliest, grossest glow spoon you can find. Fill it full of bait and just pound the bottom. And it seems like right at the end of ice, that's when they kind of start to do their spawning. They get in spawn balls and they'll really start running and eating a lot. And they fight so hard. They taste great, and they're just beautiful and ugly all at the same time.
Yeah, they're a fascinating, incredible fish. I mean, I've had them come up. I'm sure you can relate to this. They come up 10, 15 feet off the bottom and hit it. You think, oh, how does an eel? I just picture it slithering on the bottom like a snake. I mean, how does an eel pout get 10 feet off the bottom and hit that hard? And they are cool. And especially northern Minnesota, with Cass Lake, Bemidji, Leech Lake, all through that area. February on into late ice. Those offshore. They're kind of those deep, soft mud humps. Sometimes there's rock around them, but I mean that deep offshore structure. I mean, I've caught them 5 feet water too, but I mean they're cool.
That's great. All right, last question potentially. One piece of equipment you cannot live without going ice fishing, outside of a rod, reel. Your basics. Like what's that one extra thing? I mean, is it a Snickers bar?
For me, it'd be a Vexlar. I mean, there's the old joke. I think years ago, they used to have a commercial. You go home, you forget your Vexlar, you turn around and go home and leave the lake. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I can't fish without it. That
much faith in it.
Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, it gives you confidence. When you're not. When you don't know what's down there, and you don't know if you're in the wrong spot. I mean, the information you get to make decisions is invaluable.
Sam, I'm sure you're going to bring a different perspective.
I'll say two things. First thing, totally agree with Jason. If I drove 20 miles out onto Lake of the Woods and we were going fishing and I had a big group of guys, heck, maybe even if I was guiding and we forgot our Vexlaw, once you fished at one, it seems like you're just fishing blind. But besides that, one thing that over the past couple of years has really just made for a much more enjoyable time on the ice is a good pair of boots, like a good pair of insulated rubber boots. For years, I wore like old Irish setters or different boots that weren't fully waterproof, and then you get a couple days that you're standing in water, you're in slush, and now it seems like a variety of companies, I use CLAM boots, but a variety of companies now make awesome insulated rubber boots, and that's the difference between having dry feet all day and you can chill and stand on the ice and you can have a good time. So boots and a Vexlar, that's what I'd say.
Very good. All right. Let's see here. Frank R. is asking, do you keep silkies whole or do you ever trim them?
Well, I just started using them this winter, and I've been just using the whole thing on. And the fish have chewed it up so much that I guess it is kind of trimmed. I got one right here. I mean, you can kind of see it's got a little bit. I don't know if you can kind of see that, but I mean, put it up to the camera there. But I mean, the fish have I've probably caught, I don't know, at least 40 fish probably on that, maybe more. But yeah, that's a neat thing. You could take a scissors or clippers and trim it down or whatever, but I've been just rigging it on and fishing it. Been working great.
Same deal. I've just been rigging it on and fishing and it seems like it's worked, but like, it doesn't matter any kind of fishing. Never rule out modifying anything. So if this fish seems super finicky, don't be afraid to cut that down. I think it'll work even better if you cut it down, probably.
Yeah, we run aggressive fish and bigger fish, and so we just rocked and rolled with it the way it is. But yeah, get Metro Lake, smaller fish, tougher bite. You could do a lot of different things with it, and rig it up a lot of different ways too. I was rigging up where the feather or the strands came out the back on the hook, and then there's front strands that came off on the front, kind of like that old almost like, I think Lindy made a foxy jig at one time, or maybe it was blue fox. It had the feathers in the front, stuff coming out the back or whatever, And but you could wacky rig it, and have it come out the sides. I mean, you can do a lot of different things with that as far as how you put it on the hook. So.
Very good. All right, last question here. And just for the audience to know, Jason and Sobi have agreed. And Sobi, I don't know if we've talked about this, but I'm just volunteering you right now. But
volunteered you.
Voluntold you. We've all lived through that. But in this situation where we've got pages and pages of questions coming in, the social media is blowing up. I know, Jason, you had mentioned that you have a pile of questions as well directed directly towards you. Jason and Sobi will be answering as many of these questions as we can over the next couple of days. So if you feel that you have a fantastic question you want to ask, we still encourage you to post it. Oh, my gosh, yeah. Yep. You guys have a lot of questions to answer.
That's what we're here for.
Okay.
100%. We'll 100%.
I appreciate that. Thanks, you guys. Last question I'm going to ask is, what is the lightest line you guys are willing to use? I mean, you've already mentioned 1 pound before.
Yeah, and I hate using 1 pound. I don't use it unless I have to. But there's nothing worse than lifting a fish up to your hand, then you lift another fish up to your hand, and I lift that fish up to my hand, and then it breaks, and then you got to retie. And I love 3 pound tests because it feels like it's got the strength of 4 pound tests, but if you use 4 pound tests, it feels like weed whacker line, like it's just I'm talking for panfish. 3 pound is just a nice compromise that just works so well. I would say 80% of the time, but every once in a while I've seen it in northern Iowa, and I've seen it in Illinois and in other places where if you weren't using 1 pound test, and I'm talking, what's amazing to me is I was sight fishing where I can see the fish stalling out 3 feet from the jig. How do they know and see from that? I mean, I don't know, but I've seen it where if you weren't using 1 pound test, you didn't get bit, but I don't use it unless I have to. So usually you don't need it, but I'm not willing to go less than 1 pound. I think it's a liability at that point. Unless you fish for minnows, but I'm.
Your name's not
totally
Brandon Stone.
agree. I feel like 1 pound is so scary. 2 pound is like, okay, and 3 pound is like, all right, we're right in the comfort zone there. So.
Yeah, you wrap up in your transducer or anything, and you're done. And I tell you what, just in the last month, I've lost my close-up vision where I can't tie knots around it. I mean, it just happened. I mean, this summer I was tying knots, and all of a sudden it's like stabbing at the eyelet and stuff. I can't see. I'm like, what? Just recently, my eyes have gotten worse. Right in front of me. So.
That's a personal story. Thanks, Jason.
The struggle's real.
Does Shields sell readers?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we do. They're in the fly fishing department. All right, so we're going to wrap up the questions right now. Thank you, audience, and thank you, Jason and Sam, for all the participation. We definitely appreciate it. The winner of tonight is Brian D. from Grand Forks. So congratulations,
right.
Brian D. It's going to be
Nice.
fantastic. You're going to get a Jason Mitchell. So we got a different
All
shelter
right.
here. Jason Mitchell X200 thermal flip over shelter with an
That's the big bad one.
yeah, an Ascent jacket and bibs plus rods, reels, and tackles. So
Wow.
congratulations. That's fantastic. I am super jealous. You're pretty much just set up to go rock and roll. I mean, the only thing you need is what? A Vexlar, right? Vexlar
Yeah,
and an auger.
that house, I mean, that house is built for Lake Winnipeg. And so as soon as that border is open in Grand Forks,
Game
make
on.
the trip. Yep, absolutely.
Get some
That house is
greenbacks.
fat to the bone. That's a big dog.
Yep.
A big bad
Warm and big tub and yeah. Yep.
Good. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in for the last 2 nights here for the Shields virtual ice series. This is the first time we've done it. We did the virtual hunt earlier in the year and went well, so that's why we decided to do it again here. And we don't want to ignore the ice fishing world because I mean it's live and die up here. I mean it is literally it. I mean I cannot talk. Being a Nebraska boy coming up here and you don't ice fish, you're just weird. I mean why don't you ice fish? You know, why aren't you going out to the lakes in Detroit area? And it's just incredible how the culture up here is incredible. So, and to actually have living legend like Jason Mitchell and Sam Sobi up and coming, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, it's definitely really good feedback going on in the conversation. So we appreciate that. I want to make sure we thank and give a lot of praise to CLAM for hosting this and for providing the prize packages. We appreciate the partnership. Great product. So all the winners are going to get fantastic items. Again, super jealous on that one. Please make sure you guys are going to Shields, at Shields Outdoors on Facebook and Instagram to follow for more content as well. Any questions you guys post on there, we're going to kind of have a team together and kind of help out with Sam and Jason as well to get those questions answered for you. Let's see here. And a special note I got to say is because we have a big night coming up here. And if you have kids at home, we have another virtual event with Santa coming up next Tuesday. So we will have Santa, and make sure you guys are going to shields.com/Santa to get registered for that. It's going to be very excited. Everybody in the studio here is very excited for this. So we want to say, appreciate everything else. We got an ice fishing sale going on right now in store and on shields.com. So if you have not loaded up already, highly encourage you to. The ice is building. Jason, we talked about this yesterday. Even though it could be 40 degrees, we're still building ice. So good luck, everyone. Appreciate everybody's time. Appreciate everybody's participation. And good luck this year.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Good luck this year.